Hi everybody, Cam Sweet here from the Garage Connection, coming to you today with a video that I'd like to call the Tale of Two Skid Steers. It's really more like three skid steers, but I sold one, so Tale of Two Skid Steers. So what we're going to do, we're going to briefly go over these two machines, essentially because when you're eyeing up an auction, generally you're going to have the two different sort of categories of the mini skid to choose from, that being the single cylinder smaller units or the dual cylinder larger units. All right, so what I want to do is just go over kind of what to expect before you get there. Maybe, if you're not able to actually get to the auction and you're just bidding kind of blind, what you're going to expect between these two machines. Okay, so let's get into that. All right, so the two examples that we have today to talk about is, of course, our HFT 905 that I brought in from overseas. So this isn't really an auction machine, but for the purposes of this video, it's going to do just fine. So we have this one, and then we have the Rota 380L. Okay, so if you weren't aware, essentially the Rota 380L, as well as like the EG3 something, or they're high top, right? It's a high top 360. There's no mystery. It's a high top. Okay, so any of these single cylinder ones are basically going to all be the same, and really, honestly, the dual cylinder ones are kind of all the same with some slight differences with engine choices and what's not. But so this is what we got to work with. Okay, so the first thing we're going to hit on is the size of the two machines. All right, now this particular machine is narrower than the smaller one. Now that was kind of on purpose. I bought this one as the narrow one, so this is only like 32 inches wide, where this one's like 36, 37 because the tracks sit outboard. Now that's not really a hit on any of the machines, because that's just the nature of what you're working with. Now I have not seen one of the smaller units that is narrow. I've only seen them in the wide configuration. So if you are looking for something that's going to be able to fit through a 36-inch opening, or an interior door, you're going to have to go with the larger one. Now, in terms of overall size between these two machines, they are very, very comparable. Okay, obviously this one is a little bit taller, but we can attribute that to the fact that there has to be the drive components underneath it, so it's going to lift the overall height of the machine. I'm sure if this one was the same width as this one, it would be about the same height. The big difference between these two is the track design. This one has a high mounted drive motor, and then it has your standard 5 pulleys along the bottom, and you're going to be adjusting the tension on these tracks mechanically or manually. It does not have a grease tensioner. This machine has the drive motor located in the back, and then it has 4 idlers, and this one uses a grease tensioning system. Now, in my opinion, I like the mechanical tensioning because the grease tensioning, to me, it just seems like there's too many points of failure, where this one is just a threaded jack screw and a nut. So, that's not really a hit on either machine. Just keep in mind when you're looking for these that you may encounter these two types of adjustment systems. Now, other than that, the other big difference between these two machines is the robustness. Okay, this machine uses substantially larger components than the light duty single cylinder one. So the overall lifting arm is noticeably larger. I would venture a guess to say it's also considerably thicker than this one. The plates that come down the front that actually attach to the attachments, okay, these are also larger. This uses the better part of 3/4 inch steel, where this one is using a little bit less. It's maybe 5/8 or 1/2 inch thick plating. So the larger units are going to be more robust, all right? In terms of buckets and attachments, there's a variety of different things that you can get for either of these two machines. I have noticed that obviously the lighter duty components on the lighter duty machine, they do seem a little bit thinner, and their longevity is a little questionable, whereas this machine, I can tell you right now, the forks for this are twice as heavy as the forks for this machine. They're also full width, so I am able to pick up a 48-inch wide pallet, where this one, these forks don't extend out all the way. When it comes to the power plant between these two machines, this is really what we're paying for. So if you're looking at a machine that has a single cylinder Ratto engine or Briggs, or the dual cylinder one, in essence, that's where most of your cost is coming in. So this lighter unit, the Rota here, it's going to be coming to you with the typical single cylinder Ratto engine attached to two pumps. This unit has the Briggs & Stratton V-twin engine also attached to two pumps. All right, you can get either of these units with three pumps, although it's very rare to see that in an auction. Most of the time, you're going to have to order it specifically, the machine exactly spec the way you want it, to get that third pump. Now, the third pump doesn't really do anything for you if you're using the machine to drive around, move some rocks, move some mulch, etc., etc. Where it is going to shine is if you are using it with attachments that require a lot of flow. You need that third pump to be dedicated to providing hydraulic flow to that attachment. Otherwise, you are going to be very disappointed with the fact that you can't make any movement with the machine as well as the attachment. So keep that in mind as you're looking through the auctions, okay? You know, the power between the two machines, I've never stalled the big one, obviously, but I've also never stalled the little one. So do I think it's absolutely critical that you have the V-twin engine? No, not even a little bit. Okay, this machine has done everything that I have asked for it and more, and I'm always consistently impressed with what this thing's capable of. With that being said, the V-twin is substantially quieter, smoother, better on fuel, and it throws off less heat than the single cylinder one. This one also has a pressurized oil system versus the splash oil that you're going to have on the single cylinder units. So if you're looking to buy one of these things to really have a long-term relationship with it and use it, you know, for commercial use or whatnot, you're going to want to spend the money for the V-twin unit just because of the additional perks that come along with that. Now, under the hood of the Rota unit, this being the single cylinder model, it's very straightforward underneath here. So we have obviously our engine. We have a rigid coupler going to our pump setup here. If you notice, there is two pumps, but they have a common inlet coming off of our hydraulic tank. Now, each of these two pumps is going to flow up to one of the two valve bodies up on top. So each pump is dedicated to one side of the unit. From there, the outlets combine at the auxiliary valve before they run through our cooler and fan and go back to our hydraulic tank. All right, so it's very straightforward underneath here. You notice that the battery is down the bottom to probably add a little bit of weight down low for stability and whatnot. But there's really no mysteries going on up underneath here. You know, the only thing that I would say with a unit like this is, unfortunately, because the machine is throwing the hot air back into this engine compartment, you pretty much have to run the fan all the time, or at least it's strongly recommended that you run the fan all the time. The dashboard on the Rota is fairly straightforward. We have a key switch, we have a little momentary contact for the horn, fan, lights, an hour meter, and an oil temperature gauge. And then we have some warning lights. Beyond that, there's really not a lot of drama going on with the control of the machine itself. We also have the two levers up top that are going to control our track movement and our bucket curl and arm lift. And then we have the auxiliary function. Now, it is worth noting that this auxiliary function does not lock in the on position. Okay, so if you were using a attachment that required a third function, you would have to hold it the entire time to get it to move the fluid through that attachment. Now, when it comes to the larger unit, this is where things sort of switch up pretty rapidly. So again, we have the engine up underneath. However, we're not directly coupled to the hydraulic setup. We're going to be belt driven, and there's an adjustment associated with that. Now, is that a good or a bad thing? I don't know. I mean, I guess it's a nice safety feature. If for some reason something seizes up, you're not going to, you know, snap the crank on the engine. But it's also another point for failure. So if you're looking for something simple, this might not be the right move for you. The gas tank is located down low in this unit as opposed to on top of the engine in the Rota. And I will admit, filling the gas in the Rota is an exercise in frustration and rage. Versus this thing, it's a very pleasant experience. You just fill the gas tank through the filler neck, it runs down the bottom, and you're good to go. We also have a common suction coming off of our hydraulic tank. So we're going to go up into 2 attached pumps. Each of these pumps is going to run, again, one of the valve bodies. They're going to combine up at the 3rd function, and then they're going to return through our hydraulic oil cooler with fan assembly, which is substantially bigger than on the Rota. And then we're going to go back into our hydraulic tank. So both of the machines are broadly similar with just a few key differences that you need to pay attention to. Now coming over to our HFT unit here, we have a little bit of a different layout for the dashboard. If you notice, there is no key switch up here because the key switch is actually located down on the engine itself. So up here, we do have a kill switch. We have a fan and a light button. Again, a momentary contact for the horn. And then we have a nice dashboard layout that has some different gauges telling us our voltage, our hydraulic fluid temp, etc., etc. We also have 2 control levers with a noticeable difference of they're actually backwards comparative to the Rota. So this does the bucket, this does the arms. And on the other machine, it was bucket arms instead of arms bucket. So that's a little bit confusing, but I'm sure if you only have one machine, you're going to get used to it rather quickly. This is our 3rd function lever. However, on this machine, it locks on, and that's awesome. So if you're looking to do something where you need to maintain hydraulic flow through that attachment, the good news is this one will lock on in either position. It does not matter. Now, in terms of starting these 2 units, the big difference is going to be really kind of the way that the whole system works. So I have a battery cutoff on this one located on the side. So to start this machine, you turn the battery on. And then what you need to do is give it some choke. Now the choke on this is located off to the side here. There's a little lever. You give it some choke. You give it some throttle appropriate to where you want to start it. And then you are simply going to start the engine. No drama there. Now, when it comes to starting the Rota, everything is more or less located down here, but the key switch obviously is up top. So to turn on this unit, what you have to do is turn the battery on, and then you have a throttle lever down here. Okay, so you're going to set this throttle to the appropriate lever, or the appropriate position. Then the choke is over here. Now, this is a momentary choke, so you have to actually hold it, and then you can turn the key. So broadly similar, but with slight differences. Now, in terms of starting these 2 units, the big difference is going to be really kind of the way that the whole system works. So I have a battery cutoff on this one located on the side. So to start this machine, you turn the battery on. And then what you need to do is give it some choke. Now the choke on this is located off to the side here. There's a little lever. You give it some choke. You give it some throttle appropriate to where you want to start it. And then you are simply going to start the engine. No drama there. As far as the performance characteristics between these 2 machines, because they're sort of using the same pumps, the speed difference is negligible, as well as the lifting power. Anybody who owns one of these machines will tell you that really the hydraulics in the engine is not the limiting factor in what this machine will pick up and put down. The limiting factor is the weight that you can put on the back of it to offset what you're lifting. You know, I have it on good authority to say that if you weighed about 400 pounds or you had 3 or 4 people on the back of the thing, it'll probably lift a lot more than you think it will. But unfortunately, it's just not a reality that you can put that much weight on the back of it without some significant modification or tractor suitcase weights. So that's going to be the next thing that I'm looking into, is adding more weight onto the back to really see what the machines can do. Beyond that, the hydraulic flow is essentially the same. This machine uses significantly bigger cylinders, so I suspect that if you really put the two of them head to head in a true brutal lifting contest, obviously the V-twin unit is going to come out on top just because of the way it's built.